Hi, I'm Daniel Lucas, and welcome to Book 101 Review. Book 101 is all about the books that I read for the last 40 years, and today I have my special guest. He is the founder of MarryingAmerica.com, none other than Mr. Jeremy Nelson. Welcome, Mr. Jeremy, on Book 101 Review. And can you please introduce more about yourself that I miss?
Yeah, sure. I'd be happy to, Daniel. I am, of course, Jeremy Nelson, the founder of MarryingAmerica.com, which is a courting website designed for serious people looking for serious relationships. I myself have been married for almost 40 years, so I have some experience in what long-term relationships should look like. I am a certified public accountant by profession that I've been doing for decades now, and I have a couple of grown daughters.
And
That's a little bit about me.
Mr. Jeremy, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and wisdom to the world. Thank you. And today let's talk about, can intentional courtship work in a hookup world? And tell us, we're told that home is our biggest financial decision, but it is more emotional. What is true currency at stake? What will be a good for, well, intention to marry someone with this ambition?
Well, Daniel, here's the bottom line, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Throughout the course of modern history, marrying was not optional because we needed each other to survive life. It's only over the last 100 years or so where marrying has become somewhat optional, especially over the last 40 to 50 years, when women left the home and they were able to provide for themselves and their kids. Relationships, marriages became more something that you wanted as opposed to something that you needed to survive. Modern society today is paying the price for that because there are a lot of people who have gotten caught up in the short term hookup culture, and they're realizing that it's not fulfilling their emotional needs, their mental needs, the stability that you're looking for in a relationship. So, therefore, I would surmise that the vast majority of individuals who have participated in hookup culture are tired of it and they want something more long term, something stable, something that can last for decades because the hookup culture is overrated. The vast majority of people who have engaged in it will tell you it's overrated and it causes a tremendous amount of emotional distress, mental distress, and all manners of bad things happen. So I would advise anybody to recognize that yes, you no longer need that other person to survive life, but you need them now more than ever before if you want to have a life that's fulfilling, that you feel good about, and that gives you the emotional and mental stability that you're seeking.
Stability indeed. Let's start by defining our terms. In your view, what is a fundamental difference between intentional courtship and simply serious dating in today's landscape?
Well, the way I like to use a term is intentional courting. It starts off with a presumption that if all goes well, we're going to end up in marriage sooner rather than later. Intentional dating is for younger people, 18, 19, 20-year-olds who intend to date for 3 or 4 years. They graduate college, they get that first job, and they get married at 23. That's intentional dating. Courtship is a different ball game where you're already 26, 27, 34, and you're looking for that courting relationship, with the full expectation that everybody's going to put their best foot forward. Everybody's going to do, the two parties involved are going to do everything they can possibly do to turn this into a viable marriage or proposal sooner rather than later, meaning 12 months or so. That's the difference.
Interesting. Mr. Jeremy, we live in a culture that often prioritizes autonomy, options, and immediacy. What is the central case for internationality and patience in the face of that?
Well, the simple answer is everything that you just mentioned has not worked. There are more people seeking therapy and having counseling sessions because they no longer have that intentionality, that focus, that commitment to bringing stability to their lives. So since they no longer have that pressing need of survival to do so, they no longer bring that effort that it requires, and they are paying the price for it. And we can see it in any number of data points just observing day-to-day society. It's falling apart at the seams, and I believe what's leading to that happening in a significant way is a lack of serious long-term stable relationships at home. I think that plays a big part in any culture. Once you start, once the fabric of what is considered a family unit starts to break apart, then the society starts to wither and get frayed at the ends, and eventually it'll start to come apart. And I go further, Daniel, and I tell anybody, in my opinion, this generation and the next generation will essentially be the last generations that have access to what we have known as relationships since the dawn of mankind. Because what's going
Mhm.
to happen 40 years from now, everybody's going to have a robot. And the robot is going to be a lot easier to deal with than a regular human being because you can program a robot to do exactly what you want it to do, to say exactly what you want it to say and how you want it to say it. So it's going to be easier because let's face it, Daniel, dealing with people, forming relationships, it is hard work. It takes effort. It takes commitment. So 40 years from now, if given the choice between doing the heavy lifting of engaging with a real person and all their deficits and deficiencies, or acquiring a robot or two, it's my personal belief that a significant number of individuals are going to opt for the robot. That's why like I said, I advise anybody who wants to be in a traditional relationship, your window of opportunity to do so is happening right now. It's closing fast. So don't delay. Technology is not your friend in this regard. Technology is going to put you out of ever having that meaningful relationship with a human being.
Meaningful relationships, indeed. And Mr. Jeremy, why do you think there's a growing curiosity about structured or intentional relationships, even as hookup culture remains prevalent? Is this a reaction to the downsides of a casual connections?
Well, I think people are really doing what they've been told is in their best interest. I don't think this generation is being told that being in a stable long-term relationship is your best course of action. They are not hearing that message enough. They're on social media, and all the input they're getting on social media is telling them that, hey, being free, single, and disengaged, and doing your own thing, that's the way to go. They're getting their information from the wrong sources, and they go home lonely. They get into a relationship that lasts 2 months. They do it over and over again, and they get psychologically damaged, emotionally damaged. Then they need a therapist. So the biggest mistake people can make in life, in my opinion, Daniel, is listening to the wrong people. And
Mm.
unfortunately, this culture is listening to the wrong people on a massive scale, and it's causing them massive problems. So I would tell them, do not listen to these people who know not of what they speak. They are causing you problems. Seek out advice from those who are where you want to be, right? I mean, you wouldn't go to a broke person to ask them for financial advice. That would be kind of crazy. I mean, you wouldn't go to a gardener to ask him for dental advice. I mean, I don't think you'd go to a plumber, to get advice on how to fix anything other than plumbing. So I tell anybody, do not seek advice from those who have not done or are doing what it is that you want to do or to achieve. You talk to people who are where you want to be, not to people who are aspiring to be where you want to be. And that's what's happening with social media. We're listening to people who have no record of success, and we're believing them to be experts, and it's just causing each and every one of us harm, or most of us anyway, who listen to that stuff, that crap is causing them problems on a massive scale.
In a massive scale. Well, Mr. Jeremy, in a world with more connection tools than ever, many report feeling more isolated. How does the hookup culture contribute to this, and how can intentional courtship offer an antidote?
Well, again, hookup culture is here with us right now, and it probably will always be with us, because as we transition from human interaction to AI interaction, then hooking up with a human being is going to be just that, hooking up for a distraction, hooking up for a change of pace. So I mean, I don't think hookup culture is going anywhere. As a matter of fact, I would propose that it's going to get worse. I mean, and by hooking up, I mean informal relationships, relationships that don't sustain, short-term involvements with others. That's what I'm calling hookup. And if 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 people in general don't recognize how society is changing around them and intentionally look for their person, they will get stuck in this hookup culture for the rest of their lives. So, it may be just a distraction at this point. It might just be an annoyance at this point. But 10 years from now, hooking up is going to be the default if it's not already. So, again, now is a time to start looking for your serious, committed relationship right here, right now. Because every year that goes by, your window of opportunity gets smaller and smaller and smaller. And like I said, in my opinion, a generation or two from now, that window will, for all intents and purposes, have slammed shut. So jump on the opportunity while you still can. Move away from hookup culture to something more substantial, something more meaningful with people who want the same thing that you do.
Yes, definitely. Right now, people, right now, in a hookup world, Mr. Jeremy, stating your intentions for a serious courtship oriented relationship upfront can feel risky. How can when should someone introduce this desire without scaring a potential partner away?
Well, I would tell them to come to Marrying America, because that's what we do. We force people to state their intentions from day one, that I am looking for something serious. The problem that a lot of people are running into is The individuals that desire them for long-term relationships are not necessarily their ideal types in their minds. What they see as my ideal partner, those people aren't that. And what they fail to realize is that if they look at any friend that they have that's in a long term relationship and they ask themselves the question, would I want to be married to that person's spouse? The answer is invariably going to be no. It absolutely is going to be no. If they have a friend group and half the friend group is married and they ask themselves the question, would I want to be married to that person's significant other? I would bet that in most instances, the answer is going to be no. So, people need to realize that whatever they think is their ideal person, whatever they think is their, what they desire, they need to step back and recognize that they're going to have to build whatever it is that they desire. They're going to have to make concessions. That's what throughout human history, that's what everybody has had to do. They have had to make concessions as to who their ideal husband was or their ideal wife was, in order for humanity to survive. You know, Nowadays we don't have to make those concessions or don't want to make those concessions, and that is why so many of us are still single, hooking up, and unhappy. You have to realize you will need to make some concessions.
Mr. Jeremy, intentional courtship often suggests a different timeline for physical intimacy. How do couples navigate this profound difference in expectation, especially one person might be used to a different script?
Well, that's a great question, Daniel. When it comes to the question of intimacy and how soon one should engage in that, that's going to vary from couple to couple. I mean, you're going to have to get an assessment or understand what has my partner's history been like. Have they been in a lot of short-term, non-committed relationships? It's going to be a very different answer than if that person has been in one long-term committed relationship or two long-term committed relationships. So there is no carte blanche, one size fits all answer. You have to determine, is this the kind of person who has demonstrated based on their track record that they are likely to be around for the long haul? I mean, what in their track record, can I point to that indicates that they're going to be around for the long haul? Because if you meet a guy and he says, "Yeah, I haven't been in a committed relationship in 3 years. I just casually date," and I wouldn't advise a whole lot of women who are looking for a long-term relationship to engage with them because it's not going to happen. I mean, no, conversely, if you meet a guy and he's been in one long-term relationship and for whatever reason it ended, and he says, "Hey, I'm looking for my next long-term relationship," that guy is probably far more serious and is going to be far more intentional. You know what I mean? So you have to evaluate these things on a case by case basis. But I would start with somebody's history. What have they done in the past? Because that's going to be, in my opinion, a great predictor of what you're going to do in the future. And that is what would determine, how quickly one gets to the intimacy phase of the relationship.
Mr. Jeremy, how do you respond to the skeptic who says intentional courtship is just an outdated, rigid formula that does not account for modern chemistry and connection?
Well, I think society in general is coming to realize that it's not an outdated concept because we've tried something different and that's not working. Every relationship that most people know that have sustained for decades, they are the result of intentional courtship. You know what I mean? The grandparents, the parents, these have all been the result of intentional courtship. So, I think people are starting to recognize that what was once old is something that needs to be new again, because this unintentional dating, this dating for fun is having far-reaching detrimental impacts on our society. I mean, in any developed in a country, and developing countries for that matter. So, I think people on a certain level are starting to recognize that there is some legitimacy, some value to intentional dating, if in fact you're looking for that, significant long-term, potential relationship. So it's an old concept that's coming back in favor, because what's going on now isn't working for far too many people.
Mr. Jeremy, can dating apps, which are often blamed for disposal mindset, be effectively used as a tool for international courtship? If so, how?
Sure, I mean, I know people who have gotten married off of the existing dating apps. So do they work? Absolutely, they work. I mean, but in far too many instances. And the people that I've seen it work for, they've been very practical in what they're willing to accept in a partner. I mean, they have not been looking for that perfect person, the prettiest girl, the most handsome guy. They've been very practical in their expectations and what they're willing to accept. But far too many people get on these dating apps, and if the guy is not a 10 out of 10 or a 9 out of 10, um, she's not swiping on it. She keeps it moving, because, like, oh, that like 10-15% of the guys on these dating apps, they get 90% of the action. I mean, same thing for the girls. I mean, it's only the top 10-15% that get all the action on the dating apps. So, I mean, I would advise people to be far less picky in what they're looking to accept. I mean, because a perfect person, or even the almost perfect person, they don't exist. That only happens in the movies. That only happens in romance novels. But in real life, I mean, if you can get above 55, 60%, then you're into territory that you can start working with. Now, the closer you get to 100, the better off you're going to be. But I mean, if you're willing to work with somebody who has 60% of what you're looking for, then you're going to be far more likely to have success in finding your forever person. But you have to be willing to forego some things that you think you needed, because that's how it has always been through human history. Nobody has gotten 100% of what they're looking for, or even close to it, but they've been willing to forego, you know, in order to have the stability that they were seeking. So, be realistic is what I'm saying. Be realistic, be pragmatic. Don't be delusional into thinking that Mr. Perfect or Mrs. Perfect is out there. No, no. Perfection is something you create. You find that 60%, that 65%, and you try and get them to 80, 85, 90%. So, you start off with 65, 70. And I mean, if they're moldable, trainable, cooperative, then you can get them to 80, 85%. And that's what the mindset needs to be. You're not going to find them at 85, 90%. You're going to have to help them get there. But that's the problem with the dating apps nowadays. I mean, everybody wants the 10%. And the 10% aren't interested in settling down. They just want to have the time.
Beyond just finding a partner, Mr. Jeremy, what are the personal benefits of engaging in intentional courtship? How does it change an individual regardless of the outcome?
How it changes an individual is you show up present every single time because you are desiring a specific outcome, which is a long-term, stable, happy relationship. So it better compels you to show up 100%, 100% of the time, because you know what you want. If the person you're engaging with and you have the conversation and they want the same thing, then it's a matter of asking each other, what does 100% look like to you? Here is what 100% looks like to me. Since we both want this to end in a good place, you tell me what your 100% looks like, and I'll tell you what my 100% looks like. Because if a woman asks us that very same question, Daniel, we're gonna have two very different answers. So I mean, we can't show up with what we think somebody considers to be 100%. We have to ask them the question, and when they give us the answer, we have to be willing to do it. And if we're not willing to give them what they consider to be 100%, then that's where you know that this is probably not going to work. But if everything they're asking for is reasonable in your opinion, then it's just a matter then of doing it. Because that's what love is all about, Daniel. Love is about what you do. It's not about what you say. So if somebody says, so here's my 100% or 95%, and everything that they're asking for is reasonable, and you actually do it, then that signifies to them that this person really is in love with me. Because where I come from, you know, love is a verb. It's something that you actually do. It's not something you get up in the morning and say, geez, babe, good morning, I love you. No. Love is, you get up in the morning, you say, babe, I love you, and you go make her breakfast, or vice versa. That's what love is. The actual doing, not the saying. It's the actual doing. And that's why everybody loves their mother, Daniel. Not because everybody's mom is the greatest person alive. No, no. Everybody loves their mom because she engages actively in doing, even when she doesn't want to. She actively engages in doing. And that's why everybody loves their mom. It's as simple as that. So, I mean, if you want to have a healthy, long term, stable relationship, I'm not saying you need to be somebody's mom. I'm just saying you need to be actively engaged in the actions of doing what it takes to sustain relationships. That's what I would want to convey.
Very well said, Mr. Jeremy. Very well said. And how do we define a successful dating experience away from short term validation and towards a long term fulfillment, even the relationship does not culminate in marriage?
A successful relationship to me would be defined as something that you found joy in, you learned from, you had good times, you have no regrets. It was exciting, it was fun, but for whatever reason, it didn't work out. These things happen. Life isn't perfect. Sometimes you meet really, really good people, you have really good relationships, but for whatever reason, it just doesn't work out. That's how life is. You do everything right, and many times it just doesn't work out. That is just how life is. Um, so I say take that to your next experience. That, hey, look, it really and truly is possible to have genuinely happy relationships, understanding full well, that, she might get hit by a bus. You might get hit by a bus. Something tragic might happen. I mean, something unfortunate might happen and it falls apart. These things happen. But then you take away from it that yes, it is possible to find that special person. It is possible to have a genuinely loving relationship with that person. And you can move on from there. But the problem is, Daniel, is that most people out here are not experiencing that. They're experiencing the short-term highs of casual hookups, and then they're crashing and burning afterwards. Saying, "Oh my gosh, I can't believe this guy is gone 4 weeks later, or this girl is gone 5 weeks later. I mean, geez, I thought we had something going on here. This is what is killing or severely causing this generation so much mental distress. Why they're needing so much therapy." It's because the short term highs lead to some very deep and dark lows. So no, I say people who have had successful relationships tend to end up in other successful relationships because they have cracked the code. They know what it takes. So
Okay,
yeah.
They crack the code indeed. And Mr.
Exactly.
Jeremy, before we wrap up our discussion for today, I'm inviting you to please do listen to my other podcast, people, because my Abstract Essay is already in fifth season. Abstract Poetry in second season, and my Book 101 review in fifth season too. Comedy 101 second season, and my Food 101 in fifth season as well. Geography 101 fourth season, and my Baby Podcast Law 101, Mental Health 101, and Bible Verses 101. Love Letters, Movie 101 Review, Music 101 are in fourth season. And Science 101, Sex 101 in its second season. Please listen to them
I
wherever
will.
you listen your podcast. So, Mr. Jeremy, if you could leave our audience with one piece of courage or one simple first step to explore a more intentional path of love, what would it be?
I guess the one takeaway I'd want people to have is finding the relationship for you. It's not something that you're going to find. It's something that you're going to have to cultivate. It's no different than a garden. You're gonna have to tend to it. That is where you find the relationship for you. You plant the items that you want to reap, you water it diligently, you fertilize it as necessary. Just understand that a relationship is just like that. You're going to have to tend to it on an almost daily basis if you want to reap the produce from that garden. So treat a relationship like a garden that you tend to mindfully doing the things, doing the right things you know to do, and you will reap the fruits of your labor. That is what I would tell your audience. Is you have to tend to it like you're tending to a garden if you want to reap the fruits of it.
Definitely. Mr. Jeremy, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and wisdom today. So, can you please invite our listeners to support your business, your advocacy, or whatever projects that you're doing right now?
No, I mean I would advise everybody, Daniel, who's looking for a relationship, go to marriedinamerica.com. It's absolutely free, and you know, let's see if we can make a love connection or for a
Yes.
romance.
Yes, people, let's support Mr. Jeremy Nelson because if you support him for sure more and more empowering business like this to come. So, Mr. Jeremy, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Thanks so
More to
much.
come, yes, more to come, people. See you soon.